This Wednesday, we will celebrate anew the heroic deeds of the Founding Fathers. Although Washington, Jefferson, and Franklin are often the first to come to mind, this year another patriot is finally getting some of the spotlight too. John Adams is the name of this refound founder, and as a best-selling biography is currently reminding us, the 4th of July is very much his day. Our cover story is reported by Rita Braver.
In the cool grandeur of the National Archives in Washington, where the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are enshrined,
more than 1 million people a year come here just to see these.
Historian David McCullough is anything but cool.
It's a sign of gross ingratitude, the fact
about how history has treated one of the major forces behind those two documents, and indeed, the founding of our nation, John Adams.
There's no statue to him here in Washington. There's no face on Mount Rushmore. There's no monument. There's no picture of John Adams on our money. There isn't a postage stamp in circulation with John Adams' picture on it. This is a disgrace.
But now McCullough, one of the most influential historians of our time, has become an Adams advocate, using his skills and his celebrity to introduce Americans to this forgotten patriot with a massive new Adams biography.
I started to write a book about Adams and Jefferson and their crisscrossing, intertwining lives, and the more I got into it, the more I read, the more I discovered how much I didn't know about John Adams.
And so he decided to drop Jefferson and focus on Adams.
What kind of a human being was he?
He's this rather short, stout, round-faced fellow who loves to talk, loves to have a good glass of Madeira, loves his family and friends around him.
But why is Adams the least known of the Founding Fathers? McCullough says it's in part because he was not as dashing as Washington or Jefferson, not as folksy as Benjamin Franklin.
He's quick-tempered, he's abrasive at times, he's often tactless, he can be very vain, he is brilliant. I think that's probably as important as anything to know about John Adams. He had a great capacity to move people with the force of argument. He was himself a force.
A force that sprang from humble beginnings in Quincy, Massachusetts. His father, a farmer who moonlighted as a shoemaker. The family homestead still stands.
It's a straightforward, simple, bedrock New England salt box, built to last.
But it was from this simple place that Adams journeyed to Philadelphia to lead a revolution, in full knowledge that the British could hang him for treason.
For 10 years, King George and his parliament...
In the film 1776, which features one of the few popular portrayals of Adams, he's shown trying to move a reluctant Continental Congress to break from the British.
They have stopped our trade, seized our ships, blockaded...
In the end, it was Adams who won the day, recruiting Thomas Jefferson to write the Declaration of Independence and then driving it to passage.
If Jefferson was the pen of the Declaration of Independence, Adams was the voice.
And he became his nation's diplomatic voice. When the fledgling nation needed a representative to Europe during the Revolutionary War, Adams was dispatched. He helped persuade the French to commit more of their fleet to the war, and he secured vital financial help from Holland.
We were broke. We were bankrupt. We couldn't pay for the war we were trying to fight. And he managed to get the Dutch to come in with a substantial loan, the first real line of credit we had in Europe. We needed money desperately, and he got it.
We also needed a way to end the war, and he got that too, negotiating the Treaty of Paris along with John Jay and Benjamin Franklin. We needed a constitution, and so while he was still overseas, it was modeled after the one Adams had written for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. For 10 long years, affairs of state took precedence over affairs of the heart. Much of the time, Adams was separated from his beloved wife and pining for her.
My dearest friend, how much is comprised in that short sentence? How fondly can I call you mine, bound by every tie?
There was this great love affair between John and Abigail Adams, really the great love affair of the Revolutionary period.
Well, it's one of the great love stories in American history, and it's real. It's true. This is one of the greatest collections of American family letters, certainly of a prominent American family, of any we have anywhere in the country. Is there no way for two friendly souls to converse together, although the bodies...
1,000 letters to each other.
Yes,
John to Abigail, 1776.
I want to hear you think or to see your thoughts. The conclusion, there are times when the heart is peculiarly awake to tender impressions.
Abigail to John, 1780.
It is then that I feel myself alone in the wide world, without anyone to tenderly care for me or lend me. He felt that women in general were probably superior to men in general, and he respected her intelligence, her mind, as he respected maybe nobody else.
But if their marriage was perfect, Adams's political life was not. He served as the nation's first vice president, prophetically pronouncing it the most insignificant office that ever the invention of man contrived. In 1797, he became the second president of the United States, the first ever to live in the White House. His greatest accomplishment, McCullough says, was bucking Alexander Hamilton and others who wanted to begin what would surely have been a disastrous war against France over maritime shipping routes. On the downside, Adams did sign the infamous Alien and Sedition Acts, which, until they were done away with a few years later, allowed foreigners to be expelled without due process and infringed on freedom of the press. And in the end, his old friend, Thomas Jefferson, secretly working against him, defeated him for a second term in office.
They had a big falling out. They really did dislike each other for a spell, but it probably was inevitable that they would have a reconciliation.
It came when Adams finally wrote to Jefferson, beginning a 10-year correspondence from the home that he and Abigail lived in during their later years.
This is where he wrote his letters to Jefferson. Letters to his son, when his son was president of the United States, were written right there.
It was in this room, too, in 1824, that he learned that his son, John Quincy Adams, was elected president. Until George W. Bush took office, the Adamses were the only father and son to both hold the nation's top job.
Well, first of all, he was excited, he was exhilarated, he was proud. But he also, John Adams also, in effect, broke down in tears because he knew what an ordeal the son would have to go through as president. He knew from experience how tough it is, how disappointing it can be, how painful it can be at times to be president.
McCullough's book about Adams has vaulted to the top of the bestseller lists, and McCullough is hoping that it spurred enough interest in his hero to, at long last, move Congress to authorize an Adams Memorial.
John Adams was one of our best ever. He was brave, he was honest. His devotion to service, to the service of the country, to the public good, is beyond almost any other example.
Adams lived to be 90, spent his last years in this study.
He died right here in this room.
Yes,
he had a bed here.
Yes, he did.
It was July 4th, 1826, the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And incredibly, it was also the very day that another former president and signer of the Declaration died, Thomas Jefferson, entwined with Adams in death as in life.
If it were a movie and you recreated it exactly as it was, people would say, well, that's overdoing it a little. Cannon were booming. Crowds were outside. It started to rain. And when he died, according to all the accounts written at the time, the skies cleared and this huge burst of sunlight came in. And nobody would ever forget it who was present for it. The idea that he has stood in the shadows all these years does not reflect well on any of us. The time is long past due to give him his place in the American pantheon and in our American hearts.